Genre. Thanks, Harley. Genre is safe. Genre is comfortable. Genre tells us, as readers, what to expect. As writers, genre gives us guidelines to follow, which can make it a lot easier to plan a story. Put the villain monologue here, put the meet cute there, tragically kill the protagonist's mentor in this part of the story, put the whiny cat there. But do we rely on genre conventions too much? Can genre hold us back? In this episode of Rite Gud, we are joined by writer and designer Matt Maxwell. Matt, what genres have you written in?
Well, I have written, I don't know, pick one. Science fiction, fantasy, weird, which apparently is not horror, but I've also written in horror, crime, romantic suspense, under a different name. I can't really talk about it too much other than a general experience. Pretty much straight up fantasy and even franchise science fiction fantasy, i.e. in somebody else's sandbox.
I see.
Particularly for Blizzard Entertainment, which is my big splash of stardom. Yeah, and when you get to somebody else's sandbox, of course, then you have this extra set of rules, which is sometimes opaque and terrifying and surprising. So,
Right.
and then way too much on Twitter, but so yeah, it's a little of everything. Except I have a tough time deciding what a thing happens to be. I mean, it's, it just comes out as it does, and which is, of course, why I have sales that I have. So,
Right. So you don't set out to go, okay, I am going to write a science fiction story.
I haven't done that since the first thing that I wrote, I think, in like 1991. So, yeah, I mean, I've written stuff and it's like, okay, where does this fit now? That's the problem. Especially when
Right.
there's the pure genres, and then there's when you deliberately mix a genre. Like the first comic I did was called Strange Ways, which is
Yeah,
I guess they'd call it a weird western, but it's a horror story set with a western setting.
I
The
see.
problem is you piss off the horror people because they say, why are there cowboys in this? And
Right.
the western people say, well, why is this a horror story? Why isn't it something we expect? So in terms of the work, it's not anything I set out to do. It's just like, well, here's kind of the thing that I'm working with now, and let's start going with that.
Yeah, I think I do a lot of the same thing too. I don't really set out to write a science fiction story. It's just I'll write something and I guess it'll come out kind of sci-fi. I ended up writing something that people referred to as a noir story, which I
Yeah.
did not intend to, but I
Well,
was
I
pretty
mean,
happy with that.
you also have to ask with noir, normally there's the two components. There's the whole moral ambiguity thing. And well, I
Right.
mean, three components. There's also the power structures are generally out to get you or indifferent at best.
Yeah.
And then there's the visual component, which you hopefully are bringing. Hopefully, that's something I try very hard to bring into my fiction, but I don't,
Yeah.
but I'm thinking particularly filmed noir, of course.
Right.
So yeah, it's, which aspect are you going to pick from?
It's sort of the tone. You not necessarily you don't have the black and white film and stuff in
Hmm.
written fiction. You just sort of have that type of narration. I'm not quite sure how to describe it.
Yeah, there's also that whole noir voice.
Yeah.
And Chandler's a big favorite of mine, aside from his blind spots and racism and everything else. His prose voice is still pretty startling.
Oh yeah, it's so distinctive and just really fun.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like before we go on, maybe we should take an attempt to explain what we mean by genre.
Okay.
So how would we define genre? I think it obviously it goes beyond subject matter. It goes
Well,
beyond there's robots in this story. It's a sci-fi story.
right. That goes back to the whole, there's the voice, there's kind of I mean, you can talk about the psychology of it, but mapping the psychology, or the what's the word I'm looking for? Mapping something like that in science fiction, of course, is basically impossible, simply because
Right.
there's so many ways that science fiction almost becomes a mode of storytelling.
Right.
But we have I mean, looking at what even a genre, we have the tropes and expectations. But
Yeah.
I, I, I have a kind of a ambivalent slash hate relationship with tropes, simply because, I mean, I know I'll fall into them without
Right.
thinking about it,
I
because
mean,
a lot of the time it's
everybody does.
comfortable. Yeah, it's comfortable, and it's like, oh, okay, this is why this feels natural. And if I'm conscious about it, it's like, okay, well, if this feels natural, what can I kind of do to mess with it some?
Yeah. Yeah, plus, like, you don't always wanna reinvent the wheel every time.
No.
Sometimes you just wanna stick a character or a motif in there and be like, "Okay, I don't wanna rebuild this from the ground up. Just there it is. There's this character. Here's a cowboy. You guys, you know what cowboys are.
Right.
Here he is."
Right.
And that's fine, but I guess genre might be best in terms of understanding it as sort of a a certain amount of tropes maybe expected by the reader. You're either there to fulfill them or subvert them, but, like, if you're watching a romantic comedy, you have certain expectations.
Yeah. Yeah, you certainly do.
There's a meet cute, there's the thing that's gonna get in between them, and then there's the big gesture that's going to get them back together.
Right.
You have certain expectations.
It's funny how well it certainly can be, and I think as it's practiced a lot, the romantic comedy is,
Mm,
in a lot of ways, it's like the most hidebound of the anything that I've come close to working with. It absolutely is. It's like, well,
yeah,
here's the meeting, here's the first touch, here's the almost kiss, here's the it's very, very beat oriented in the story.
right.
And it's not always something that sits well with me.
But that goes for any genre, like a haunted house genre, we expect
Hmm.
there certain things, certain beats, depending on what sort of haunted house genre. If there is a horror story and the protagonist is a mom or a dad and they have a kid and
Yeah.
it's like a haunted house story, we know at some point there will be a scene where the child insists, "No, mommy, Mr. Biggs is real."
Yeah.
We know that fucking scene is coming. It happens every time.
If not the kid being taken away by Mr. Biggs, and
Right. The
you
kid's
know,
taken away by Mr. Biggs or possessed by Mr. Biggs or,
right,
like, you expect it because that's the genre that
right,
you know what it is, and so we all kinda know have some certain amount of genre awareness. If you watch more horror movies, obviously, you're going to be more horror savvy.
right.
If you read more romance, you are a lot more romance genre savvy. But let's look into a little bit of the why as genre. Like, why do we obsess so much over genres? Is this a thing that we do as writers, or is it really more coming from the market, from the industry?
There are certainly people who are very passionate about. I mean, the easy one that comes to mind for me in terms of the kind of messy, kind of low level warfare between the two is often between science fiction and fantasy.
Right,
You have people who are very much science fiction people who are very much fantasy people,
right.
and there's not much room for transaction between the two. It's there are hard borderlands, and here's all the rules, and let's set out these walls so that we maintain this level of purity and expectation.
It's so funny though, to people who aren't involved in either of those. They just kind of see him as the same.
Right.
They're like,
No,
ah,
that's
it's all nerd shit.
yeah. I mean, it's all yeah. It's our Marvel superheroes, science fiction or fantasy. Well, obviously fantasy, but they have all the science fiction trappings, so that
Right.
and we have the gizmos and the what's its, and ultimately Star Trek's fantasy, but you can't really say
Yeah.
that. We might
Yeah.
want to edit that out.
No, that's okay.
People
I
might
mean, I
want to
would
kill me.
definitely argue that Star Wars is fantasy. It
Well,
is
yeah,
space
certainly.
fantasy.
No, it absolutely
It's
is.
space opera, but there's wizards in it, and that's
Yep.
okay.
Hmm.
I like space wizards. They're good.
Yeah, this is it's people who worry about maintaining a level of purity that kind of get worked up about that sort of thing.
Yeah, or get mad like it's not is none of this.
Yeah.
It's that other thing. Like it doesn't matter. It does not
It
matter.
really doesn't
Who
matter.
cares? It's fun. It does
Yeah.
not matter.
But there's the reality of the marketplace, and is
Yeah.
something as simple as, I mean, with Amazon, I guess it's better because we no longer have the what 5 to 7 sections of the bookstore where
Right.
maybe you'll end up. This is of course talking about like the before times when you wrote a book and it could get into a bookstore unless you're being published by one of the major publishers.
Mm.
But yeah, you have the hard literary fiction, romance, science fiction, and fantasy. Sometimes horror's tossed in there, sometimes it's not. Crime,
Right.
and even westerns. In terms of fiction, with Amazon, we have the categories and then the subgenres, and apparently you're supposed to figure out how to trick the algorithm into making you the
Right.
the the,
You're the number one
the king or
published
queen
in.
of whatever mix of subgenres, so that you get loved by the algorithm. And oh boy, that's just exhausting.
Yeah. I mean, there is a certain audience expectation for genre, but
Yeah.
a heck of a whole lot of the time, genre's there just as a way to help sell it.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to sell something if you can kind of label it and manage customers' expectations. Like if you're selling food, you want to say what kind of food is it? This is a
Right.
burrito. This is a this. This is a that.
Yeah.
This is a kind of sandwich. If someone asks what is this food, and you're like,
Yeah.
it's really
They're
good.
not.
Like,
They're
okay, but
not
what the
gonna.
fuck is it? Like, no one's gonna eat that shit.
They're not gonna be interested. If you tell me it's a burrito and I bite into it and it's filled with peach slices, then I'm probably going to be upset because I expected some nice refried beans and carnitas and some hot sauce. And yeah, so expectation definitely plays a big part of it, and therefore marketing.
Right.
But the question is, how much does it matter?
Yeah.
I mean, we joke about food and we can't really do the 1-to-1, but yeah, it's like, are you priming expectations for the book? Does this mean it's going to have a happy ending, sad ending? What's the tone? What's the voice?
Yeah.
All of those things go into flux too. So it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think because of this, unfortunately, it makes it a lot harder to sell something that doesn't fit neatly into a genre. Like some of
Oh
my
yeah.
favorite works, some of my favorite movies are things that don't fit into a genre. Like a recent movie that I've just fallen in love with is this 1999. It it's called Ravenous. It's like a
Oh yeah.
horror,
I love that
dark
movie.
comedy
Yep.
period piece about cannibalism, and it's
Yeah.
this great movie, but how the fuck do you market it?
It
Like
wasn't, and they didn't know how to market it.
they had
It
no
came and
idea, and
went.
it's this brilliant, really interesting movie, but I feel like the fact that it was so unique worked against it in terms of just selling it.
No, and that's absolutely true because yeah, it's but it's strange because you kind of want to expand things a little bit, and you don't I don't at least I don't want to read the same thing over and over.
Right.
I know I'm sure there are people who do, and it's like, well, so I'm only going to get this because this is going to give me that zap that I want.
Yeah.
But yeah, something comes along, it's like, well, it's neither this nor that. So, what are we supposed to do with it? How are we supposed to handle it? How are we supposed to get it reviewed? Who do we put it in
Yeah.
front of to get it pushed out on the internet now?
Right. Or even to just get it published in the first place. I have
Or
so
even
many
to get
writer
it.
friends who've heard from agents and publishers, "We love this book. It's brilliant. It's amazing, but it'll never sell. So we're rejecting it." Like,
Yeah,
because it doesn't fit into the box.
right. And publishing is a business,
Yeah.
so they will make decisions based on what they perceive their bottom line is telling them.
Right.
If I start talking about the business, I'm gonna you probably have
Rant
to cut me
angrily
off.
for
So
several years.
yeah, yeah. So let's. I mean, we can do some of it, but if I begin to start ranting, then
Yeah.
just zap me through the connection here. It's like, okay, yeah, yeah.
Right.
I mean, just to if I can talk about what I'm currently writing right now
Sure.
is the Hazeland series of books, and it's crime, but it's uh, kind of weird adjacent horror, but it's kind of a fantastic setting, but it's also kind of slice of life.
Huh.
So where do you put that?
Right.
I'm probably slitting my own throat here, but I hesitate calling it horror because it's not. There are horrible things that happen in it, but
Right.
it's not that same jolt at the end. It's not the same emotional delivery.
Right.
So I don't want to get people, worked up like, well, hey, I was told this is horror and I didn't get that feeling. And now I'm
Yeah.
really mad and I hate this person. I'm going to go talk about how much I hate this person.
Yeah. It's not a horror story. I wasn't scared.
Right. They didn't, they tricked me. They didn't give me this thing that I thought I was looking for. So that's,
Yeah.
and God bless my publisher because they said, yeah, we can do that. And I said,
Nice.
okay, great. let's go do that then. Let's get nuts.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's just one case. But there's lots of other ones that we can bring up. Like I just read Things We Lost in the Fire, and I'm
Mm.
trying to remember who. It's a book of short stories by oh shoot, I had it. Caterina Enriquez
Mm.
from a couple of years ago, and they're all definitely horror stories. But she lives in Argentina, I believe in Buenos Aires. But it's all horror that's kind of haunted by the shadow of the dictatorship that they lived through in the 80s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and how there's some lingering notes of that you just can't escape, and she uses that as kind of a scaffold to build these horror experiences on.
Yeah.
It's really outstanding work, but it's not really conventional horror, which is,
Mm.
I think, one of the reasons why I like it. I mean, I've been reading horror books since I was 12.
Yeah.
I mean, I read Night Shift when it came out in paperback, so that's how old I am.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is tough to play with that, expectation versus maybe I gave them something good enough that they'll look past that, or maybe they're open-minded enough, and that's tough to tell too, because a lot of times people are very invested, especially on the internet. And well, my identity in the big room of Twitter is I am, a reader of this,
Right.
and I talk about this and only this.
Right.
So that's a whole nother, part of the map that gets tricky when the more you kind of dig into it.
Yeah. No kidding.
So, but yeah, in terms of regular publishing, it's like, yeah, people can love a book, but they look at it, it's like, we have no idea what to do with this, and
Right.
the marketplace, and they're not going to stick their necks out for. Granted, if you're a big enough name, you can probably begin to do stuff that's really out there, or that's
Right.
really breaking things. Again, a Stephen King or I mean, because for instance, the Dark Tower, the Gunslinger stuff, that's not, that's fantasy, but it's not. I guess it might even be epic fantasy, kind of.
Kind of.
But it's not really. It's certainly not a horror novel.
No.
It's not Doctor Sleep or The Shining or any of that stuff. So, but again, King is almost his own. He exerts his own gravitational force.
Right. He can write
He
pretty
can
much
do whatever he
anything.
wants.
It's going to
Yeah,
sell. He's
it's
Stephen
gonna
King.
sell. Yeah. So that's an enviable position.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about the value of genre awareness, of being aware of genre, of just kind of understanding genre. It's
Okay.
obviously being genre savvy, and it means being market savvy, and that's good
Right.
for your career.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm an expert on that. So this will be fun.
Yeah. I mean, there are people who just kind of, I've met a fair number of financially successful, usually it's like supernatural romance writers, people who don't like to read and don't like to write. They just kind of look at Amazon statistics and look at the market and go, this is the thing that will make the most money. And then they
Right.
write it, and then it
Yep.
works. And I'm like halfway between admiring them versus wanting to murder them.
Yeah, you're. That's kind of you're looking at it. It's like you're confronted with this. At least I am. I'm confronted with this thing that I just don't know how to react to. It's like you're writing this stuff that you would never read, and you hate, but it sells. So, I mean, I've had the luxury or the curse of basically being my own first audience.
Mm,
Somebody posted a question on Twitter, I think yesterday even. It's tough to remember with time being what it is now. it's like, would you be a fan of your own work? Well, it's like, of course, why wouldn't you be? I mean,
Right.
it's like, why are you writing something you wouldn't want to read? That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
No.
I mean, I've done contract work where I've like, okay, I'm not really wild about this, but the paycheck's good. I'm not going to argue. I'll try and do the best I can.
Yeah.
In terms of being market savvy, I don't know. I'm not sure I can be much help in that I only know very kind of small markets that are relatively isolated, i.e. the cosmic horror, weird
Yeah.
horror kind of. That's because that's where I've been published recently.
Oh, I don't know a fucking thing about the market. I am hopeless at
Yeah.
that. I've kind of given up on that. I have kind of tried to do that a little bit before, but I wasn't very good at it, and it just felt very unsatisfying.
Yeah,
And I'm
and
like, you know what? No, I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to do something I care about. I'll be a writer with a desk job, with a day job for the
right.
rest of my life, and I've made peace with that.
Yeah. That's I mean, at least you made peace with that. I still struggle with it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the market and what works in the market, chasing the market that's insane. Unless I suppose if you're a really fast writer, maybe you can try and time it. I don't know. Maybe you can
Oh,
try and
yeah.
catch the wave. I mean, the first manuscript I tried to sell was a thing called Blue Highway, again back in 1991, and I sent it to Avon Books or whatever the science fiction imprint was. I have it. I have the rejection letter around here somewhere, and John Douglas said, "Hey, it's written. It's pretty good. Do you have a fantasy book in your drawer?" It's like, no, I wrote this. I gave you this. This is what I have. This is what I can do. He said, "Well, I can't really help you." Oh, okay. Well, and to my credit, the next thing a few years later was a fantasy thing, but it was a weirdo kind of mashed up cyberpunk technology thrown into Norse mythology.
Hmm.
And it's like, yeah, nobody wants that.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, but so yeah, it was fantasy kind of, but so I'm incapable of taking good directions.
Right.
I mean, it's weird for me to think of something like cosmic horror as being a target market.
Yeah.
It just is, because it was always this outsider stuff to me, always, always, always. I mean, even learning about Lovecraft at like age 12 or 13, it's like, and that stuff was, I think it was just being brought back into print then. It had gone
Mm.
into print like in the 70s and the early 80s. It wasn't really in print until Del Rey brought those collections out with the Michael Willan covers, at least very distinctive to at least me. So, but aside from that, it was like why would you want to write that? It's being read by old weirdos, basically.
Yeah.
Fast forward, 40 odd years later, and well, there are a group of people reading this and talking about it, but it's still a bunch of, and I say this in the most affectionate manner possible, a bunch of outsiders and weirdos and strange folks who are like, okay, let's see what you got in the strangest corners of your brain. Give me
Right.
that. So I appreciate that, but it's still tough to think of. Okay, now can I tweak this to maybe make it more copacetic to these folks? It's like,
Mm.
well, I can only do what I can do. That's kind of the conclusion I came to.
Yeah, that's what I kind of decided on.
I mean, as for knowing audience expectations, that's, I don't know. I don't know if I mean, like, I can only think of, like, when I'm going through, for instance, movies on Amazon or whatever, that I'm trying to, like, okay, I just need something to sit down and watch, and I don't want to pull a DVD off the shelf.
Mhm.
It's like, what's my expectation of this thing? Well, I really kind of just want to be surprised.
Yeah.
I kind of want something new. I've seen a lot of movies. I've internalized all the beats. And if you're not going to give me something new, at least, either make it pretty or interestingly ugly or interestingly cheap or, so yeah, I don't know. I I'm worried about getting through the book, honestly, than,
Yeah.
oh, well, the audience isn't going to like this. So, or
Yeah.
cackling that, oh, well, now I get to wreck my character's life and ha, 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 the audience is going to love this. And, I
Mm.
never understood that either. So,
Kind of. I mean, we're in this very weird social media landscape now where if you
Yep.
don't fulfill the audience's expectations in a certain way, they will show up at your house
Yeah.
and hide
Which
in the bushes
yeah. Wow.
and
Yeah.
accuse you of violence against them or something. So that's
Or
an extra fun thing to deal with.
well, yeah. I mean, there's your danger of working on somebody's favorite childhood thing, or telling a franchise story. So yeah,
Yeah, I don't think
it's
I could do that successfully. I'd probably get stalked or something.
yeah.
Or just fired, or I don't know. Um, but yeah, I mean, there is definitely a value to, I think, being genre aware, just partly in terms of like, do you surprise the audience? Do you give them what they want? And also, just if you're going to write in a genre, I think it's just good to know it.
Oh yeah. No, it's
A lot of literary fiction writers will do this thing where they're like, "Oh,
yeah,
let me try and write a ghost story," and the ghost story they write has the most like
yeah,
cliched standard bits because they don't read much horror, they don't read many ghost stories, and they don't realize like, "Hey, this thing you're doing has been done like 700 times.
yeah.
Don't do this thing."
I mean, you kind of need to know why it works. It's that what's that sawhorse about? You need to know grammar before you can start breaking the rules effectively,
Right.
more or less. You need to learn English so that you can go around gleefully adding comma splices and
Yeah.
dangling participles and all those things that I've forgotten what they technically are and probably use them all the time. So yeah, you do. I think if you are going to work in it, you do need to know it. But there's also I think some value in a willingness to be a little bit of an outsider in it,
Right.
but maybe not too much. Although I've seen this, and I suppose it's because of the people I follow on Twitter, but I hear about it more often than not. Somebody who's writing genre fiction, i.e., New York Times bestseller fiction that is still smart and good,
Hmm.
but they will say, just like you brought up the example of the haunted house. Well, like, I'm going to write a fantasy book, only it's going to be arch, and it's like, yeah, see, that doesn't you don't you're not with it, and it's not quite parody either, and it's not even pastiche. It's something else. It's good to know some, and maybe even a lot, but I think reverence, like
Yeah.
absolute reverence, is never a good idea.
No, no. Fanboy art is just
Yeah,
awful and boring.
yeah. It's that point it becomes didactic, or what's the I'm stuck with the weird example from Deep Space Nine, where the Cardassian Taylor character makes people sit down for a Cardassian play, and it's all about the glory of the bureaucratic state. It's just like that's how that stuff comes off to me. You're worshiping this horrible, well, not horrible, but you're worshiping this rigid thing that is
Right.
meant to chew down individuals and produce pulp.
Right. Yeah, or it's just kind of boring, and there's too much of a reverence with the subject matter, with the material to actually play with it and change it and do something new, you know.
Right.
Oh, well, we can't kill off this character because he's my favorite character, or oh, we
Yeah.
can't change this thing because I like this thing and everyone likes this thing, and so you just get a rehash. You just get, I don't know, Rise of Skywalker or whatever. You just get this like really
Yeah. Well,
boring thing.
now wandering into franchises, that's another matter
Yeah.
entirely. So,
Yeah.
although you can get interesting, I don't even want to say misfires, because I still think The Last Jedi was legitimately interesting,
Yeah.
what they were doing with it, and then of course it just gets buried in the first 2 minutes of the of the next installment. So, oh well, let's
Right.
just pretend that never even happened. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So there, I mean, there is this, I think, utility to a certain amount of genre awareness, but there's a problem with writing to it. There's a problem with being like a fanboy or a fangirl of such and such genre and trying to write it, and that it can be very limiting and I think very formulaic. Like,
yeah,
oh, I love epic fantasy, and epic fantasy always has a prophecy with the chosen one, so that's what I got to put in my book, and it
right.
always has one of those, so that's what I got to put in that, and I got to do this, and
Yeah,
you can kind of tell. I've met a lot of like aspiring fantasy, aspiring science fiction writers who only read the one genre they want to write in, and the work they put out is always just like just a really kind of bad, watered down version of that genre.
yeah, it's whereas when I it's not that I've written that much fantasy in terms of like epic fantasy, for instance, but yes, the first thing I would do is I would probably pick one trope, i.e., the chosen one trope, and
Yeah,
break it immediately. And it's like, okay, now let's see what we get with this. But I
yeah,
don't think But you have to be selective, and you kind of have to commit to the bit in that one. But again, now whether or not that'll get past everybody, who knows? I honestly don't know. A lot of epic fantasy. I mean, I read Tolkien because of the language, not necessarily, and it is a good story, but it's also one that has been mercilessly picked to death, and the
right.
bones have been picked to death, and whatever was left of the dust has been picked to death. So
Yeah.
it's not a realm I really want to play in right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what new thing can you add to it
Right.
that hasn't been already done? I kind of feel like you have to let that particular sort of genre kind of die out for a good 20 years and then revisit it and then like make it fresh and new again or something.
Yeah, I think there's some to that, but I could also I could probably point out any genre or subgenre that we could think of or name is being published right now.
Oh, of course.
Whether or not it's by anybody we'll see, or we have to go trawling through Amazon to find it, or that sort of thing. So it's nothing's going to get that 20-year rest now.
Right.
So
Right.
you kind of just have to forge ahead.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in terms of formula, yeah, that's a real thing. And like going back to romance and romantic comedies, it's all those beats are there, and you better be on those beats. You better be choreographed well. Now you
Mm.
do have room to do your own thing, but you still have to have that. You still have to work with that skeleton, which I always kind of bridled at.
Right. Right. And after a certain point, I'm gonna sound like a total snob, but you almost stop feeling like an artist and start feeling like you're making someone's Chipotle burrito.
Yeah,
Just, "I want this in it. I want that and that." You
it,
make just assemble it the way I tell you to. Like,
right.
"Oh, okay."
And sometimes you want a quarter pounder. I mean, there's
Yeah.
that's
Well, sometimes you want a professional chef.
oh yeah,
Sometimes if you're an artist, you wanna be the chef who makes it, not the Chipotle guy,
right.
because being the Chipotle guy fucking sucks.
Yeah,
Being a chef is, like, honorable and prestigious. Being the burrito assembler on the assembly line at Chipotle is a real bad time, and I do worry that there's increasing pressure on artists or writers to just be the burrito guy.
yeah. We're getting back to the market and the demands of the market there. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's tricky. It's because at what point are you too slavish or too focused on that structure and hitting those notes? And at what point, when does it stop breathing? That's always a big thing with me, is like, is this work breathing right now? Is it too tightly plotted? Is it too hemmed in?
Mm.
I get that feeling a lot watching whatever happens to be on. It's just like things can be structured perfectly,
Yeah.
but it's like, wow, I can it's a beautiful crystal, but it's not alive. All these people saying lines, I'm not feeling anything out of this. They're going through it because the story is literally pushing them this way. I'm not being sold.
Yeah.
I don't see that this is happening. So yeah, that's tricky too. And I mean, there's a note here about the trappings and
Mm.
forgetting to focus on, hey, why do we like stories in the first place?
Right. Right. I do find that a lot when aspiring writers. I see this a lot in fantasy writers, in people who want to write that epic fantasy novel. But I do think when you focus on genre too much, you get obsessed with the trappings of the genre and you just forget to tell a story. Like,
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
look at forums with aspiring fantasy novelists, they'll go on and on and on about world building,
Right.
on and on and on about here's the magic system and here's the history and here's the lore and here's how wizards work and here's some maps I drew of the kingdom. And then they'll like forget to tell a story. They'll forget to really develop a compelling protagonist and
Yeah.
have an interesting conflict. It's just let me give you another 50 pages about the economics
Yeah.
of my realm, and here is what their major exports are.
I think there is a value in doing that,
Mhm.
but you got to keep as much of that off the page as you can.
Oh, absolutely.
You really just bury it, just hide it.
Yeah.
Have it exhibited in little lines of dialogue, in action, in demands from side characters of the main character, or in what the main character wants, but not. Yeah, if you sit down, my favorite example is, I'm reading something and then, hey, this is a lesson in swordsmithing, and I don't care.
Right.
I don't care.
Well,
I
just
want to get back to the story. Okay, needs to make a sword. Got it. Let's get
yeah.
moving.
Yeah, or just explaining every single point. Like if
Right.
I'm just imagining if you tried to write a modern novel in that style and how like nightmarish it would be. It'd be like
Oh my
he
gosh.
ate a sandwich. A sandwich was a delicacy created by an earl 300 years ago who blah blah blah, like every single fucking thing written like that, it would just
Yeah.
be
I mean,
excruciating.
I think that can be helpful if you're trying to make the everyday alien,
Yeah,
but
but
you
you're
got to be
probably
careful.
not. I feel like if you're writing a fantasy novel, you're
Right.
not dealing with that's the opposite of the thing you want.
The only something that jumps to mind is somebody from another period coming to our period. And if you want to, explain how really weird our world is, you bring an outsider into it. But yeah, those are special cases. It's like I read all the Dungeons and Dragons books when I was, and I'm talking about the rule books, not the Forgotten
Mhm.
World stuff. And it's just like, oh yeah, the magic system's kind of cool, but I'd rather read stories about dudes blowing stuff up
Yeah.
or defeating ancient spider gods or this sort of thing. It's like that's all kind of icing,
Mm,
and icing is tasty, but wow, more than a couple spoonfuls of it and you're going to be looking for something else.
mm.
That's me.
Yeah.
I'm a weirdo.
Yeah, well, and I do think that is what a really common problem of falling in love with the genre
Hmm.
and not on writing itself.
Hmm.
You just, oh, 50 pages about blacksmithing and not focusing on, say, sentence craft. Just can you write a good sentence?
Well,
Can you
that's
write a fucking
yeah,
good sentence? Like, no, but let me tell you about my wizards. Shut the fuck up.
yeah. That's voice and that's stuff that I think it can be
Yeah.
taught and developed. But yeah, that's something that's really.
Yeah, but when you focus entirely on the genre, and I think
Oh right,
because there's such a tendency to do that because of fandom,
yeah,
like I'm a fantasy fan, I'm a this fan, I'm
right,
a sci-fi fan. It's all about the trappings and not
yeah.
about just the craft of writing, and
No,
it's
that yeah, it's
such a bummer. It's
yep,
so frustrating, and it limits reading too. It really limits reading. You'll see writing groups where people obviously have very limited things that they're reading, and they'll ask so many questions like, hey, can I have more than one protagonist and switch between their perspectives? It's like, yes,
yeah,
good lord, you got to read more.
yeah,
If you just read slightly more, you would know this already.
yeah. Reading outside the genre is of course absolutely critical,
Essential.
and even even reading good for you stuff. There's plenty of entertaining stuff that's good for you. I mean, and there's plenty of entertaining stuff that presents as one genre, but is really something else entirely. But talking about something that's quote good for you and presents as
Can you define good for you? What do you mean by
what
good for you?
i.e., it has some depth, it has some substance to it. It's not simply an entertainment experience. It's not
Yeah.
mere entertainment. But something like Blood Meridian, which presents as a Western in theory, but it's really a horror novel
Mm.
spanning the westward expansion. So it's, yeah, you need to get outside a little.
Well, a suggestion that our dearly departed audio gremlin made was he did want us to talk about inherent politics as an excuse for writing monarchist tripe in fantasy. I think that is a
Everybody, I mean,
very
we're,
interesting topic
yeah,
to.
no, we're, it's like there's always kings and queens, right? I
Yeah, there's
mean,
never
that's
a
just the way
functioning
things are.
democracy.
Yeah, or an anarcho-syndicalist collective, or,
Yeah,
well, sometimes we get, no, sometimes we get religious autocracies too.
yeah. Or we never get really like even an Athenian style democracy. It's always there's a king and queen.
Yeah,
Always, always, always. And I think it's so funny that by the standard fantasy novel tropes, like, okay, you can imagine wizards and dragons and shit, but you can't imagine like people voting.
yeah,
You can't imagine a parliament.
yeah, or even a republic. Yeah,
Yeah, not even a republic.
because I think in some ways there's kind of a tension between like a real life bureaucratic state and then magic, for instance.
Yeah.
That, but yet we, they'll probably, you may have, again, your religious autocracy with, miracles on demand, and, enemies being smited by the members of the church, but that you still maintaining bureaucracy there. So I don't know if there's some like mental block there, or
Mm.
it's just, oh, there's always kings. So if it's just
Mm.
sheer laziness,
I
honestly.
mean, one could argue that I think a lot of some fantasy novels are really clearly going for an archetypical
Yeah.
thing, in which case, kings and queens, if you're dealing with archetypes, that sort of stuff makes a heck of a whole lot more sense than like contract management specialist level 3 of the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Right.
But I do think some fantasy novels really do go for this sort of like grittiness and sort of down to earthiness, but they're still doing the same kings and queens, still doing the
and
same thing.
and even more, they're like, hey, kings and queens, and this is all cool,
Yeah, this
which
is
is like,
fine. There's the good king. It's such a trope
yeah,
in fantasy where like
yeah, I know.
putting the good king who's the real descendant of the bloodline on the throne, and that's not like
Yeah,
questioned.
it's like, dude, you're not helping yourself there. Hold on.
Yeah, well, we see what happens in real life. When that happens in real life, you get Habsburg jaw. It's
Hmm.
not a good thing, man.
Yeah,
Whenever someone in real life starts talking about the purity of their bloodline, it's like, oh no.
yeah, you're a psychopath.
Oh
So,
yeah, either like incest or a genocide's about to happen. Neither of those is a really, really good thing that I really want to deal with. Like, oh
yeah.
fuck.
Again, some of it I think is just expectations. Just like, well, this is, I grew up reading these fantasies with kings and queens and dragons and knights and everything else. And again, my first impulse is, okay, what can we break?
Yeah.
Again, this is why I'm not writing fantasy,
Yeah.
although I kind of am. I mean, I'm writing fantastic, but not fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean.
And I think there may be a lot of internalized politics that are not that great.
Yeah. I do think there is a lot of a reactionary streak in a lot of pulp genre fiction, and in any kind of escapist fiction. There is often a sort of heavy reactionary streak to it. I know The Iron Dream was this really sharp satirical take
Yeah,
on it in the
Spinrad, right?
70s. Spinrad, yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really, really
Made a lot of
interesting
science
book.
fiction people unhappy.
Oh, yeah. It was a very necessary book, and I would love to see someone do another one of those for our current era, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what that would look like, but I do think that impulse is still there in a big way.
Yeah. Probably. I mean, my first impulse really leans towards noir, and again, the mistrust of all these power structures that are in place.
Mm,
Or, there's different factions of the power structure, and the interesting person is always between them. generally being ground to dust between them, but doing what they can to stop the process or get out from the gears or protect the innocence or honor of their client, or
Yeah.
if they're guilty and then letting them hang.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but that's I don't. It's not an apolitical stance, but
Mm.
it is its own kind of individual. Not quite the Steve Ditko Mr. A in between the black and white, but you have to look at this thing called society as a machine and who's pushing the levers and what are they doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Which unfortunately, I feel like some neo noir again, fanboy fiction or fanboy
Oh
films
yeah,
really misplace. In the 90s, there was this really big obsession with reviving noir, but it was
yeah,
all about okay, shadows and people talking about dames and
yeah,
hats, and there was this total lack of understanding of okay, the thing that made noir interesting was that it was about corruption and a societal
yep,
level, and a
yep,
heck of a whole lot of the really great noir writers and screenwriters came out of these socialist theater collectives and had their careers destroyed by the Red
yeah,
Scare. So there's a very subversive streak in a heck of a whole lot of it, and
right.
that was so missing from a lot of the imitators that came later. So it just felt really hollow and sad.
The imitators glommed onto the whole.
The
Okay, the shadows
aesthetic.
thing, that's cool. I mean, shadows are always cool,
Shadows are cool. The
but
aesthetics are
and
cool.
cityscapes,
Dames with nice gams, those are good.
yeah,
We all like dames with
cityscapes are
nice
cool.
gams.
But locking it into this sort of 30s 40s mentality and then just transporting it even into the 90s, it's like, yeah, you have to change some stuff if you really want it to, again, to breathe and work, or you're just writing badly.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
And we're not trying to do that. We're trying to write good.
We're trying to write good over here. But I do think this is something that I think about a lot and mention on this podcast. I do see, I think, a little bit of a parallel between our obsession with these very rigid genres, these very kind of strict genres and micro genres and subgenres and strict identity to them. It does strike me as a little bit of a parallel to a sort of increasingly popular way of seeing the world, which is that we see people as inherent immutable types and
Yeah,
like an identity, for example, as a thing you are and not a
right.
thing you do, and not related to how you actually live in the world, how you actually live your life.
Well, even worse, an identity becomes a thing you consume,
Right.
which is
It
okay. Whoa.
becomes an IKEA couch
Yeah.
with some decorative colors on it.
Yeah, again, the focus on the surface elements and not looking at what made things work under the hood.
Well, I think part of that, it's not beyond genre. It's beyond genre. I mean, it's just kind of a worldview, seeing
Yeah.
people as types,
Hmm.
like going just beyond genre, but seeing this is my identity, this is what I am,
Right.
regardless of how I live.
Hmm.
There's also the issue that genre names don't really tell you that much. Like,
No.
you say a book is sci-fi, but what the fuck does that mean? Ready Player One and Blindsight are both in the same genre, which is science fiction. But you would never compare those two novels. You know, if someone
No.
picks up Peter Watts's Blindsight, they ask, what is this like? You would never in a million years say, oh, it's a lot like Ready Player One, because it is not a lot like Ready Player One. It is
No.
radically, radically different. So on top of the issue with genre being formulaic is that it's not that helpful. It's not really that helpful as
No.
a
And
moniker.
and we can do the same thing in horror. Is The Exorcist the same thing as Night of the Living Dead? I mean, not really. They're both horror.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that's with any broad genre. Although we can probably do it with westerns too. I mean, we
Yeah.
can compare a Roy Rogers western to The Wild Bunch,
Right. Right.
which is less a western and more a meditation on men of the era and loyalty in particular,
Yeah.
and where that takes you. So, is it the cowboy duds, or is it something deeper? Is it just the throw it out into the desert and mountains and horses, and now you have a western. But especially the macro descriptors are it's tricky,
Mm.
but people seem to think they have meaning, so we stick with them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's move on and talk a little bit about breaking genre barriers. You've mentioned that you don't deliberately set out to write in a particular genre. You just set out to write, and here's how it comes out.
Yeah,
Well, let's look at some work that doesn't try to stick to these barriers, that doesn't try to fit neatly in and point out that there is a place for it. Sid wanted to note that the sort of categories, the lines between them used to be a lot gooier.
yeah,
Like guys in the pulp era were very happy to stick cosmic horror in a barbarian sword and sorcery adventure
right.
story. Sci-fi noir was really hot for a while, like with Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. It's a sci-fi noir novel. Or then there's that very 70s, early 80s thing where it turns out that this primitive fantasy world of magic is actually our post apocalyptic future, and the ancient relics they're looking for are like Cold War era weapons. I fucking love that shit. Oh, that's the best. That's one of my favorite things. That even did carry out into the 90s a bit. A fair bit of 90s cyberpunk includes supernatural elements like psychic powers, ESP. When a cyberpunk story includes a psychic, I'm just like, oh my god, this the best. It's the best shit. I love it. Where it's just very clearly like, we are not even attempting to be scientifically accurate. Here's a guy who sets things on fire with his mind. We will use some sciency words to pretend that there is an explanation for this, but just roll with it. Just roll
just
with
yeah,
it.
just let it
Just
go.
let it fucking happen. That's the best shit. Best shit.
Yeah, and that's the stuff that'll end up getting remembered, at
It's
least by
so
some.
good. It's so good. It's a thing that like the editors and I feel like publishers and the little like nitpickers complain about it, but it is my absolute fucking favorite shit.
No, I love the stuff
Ah.
that falls between the cracks and is neither fish nor fowl. Stuff
Mm.
like the Night Stalker, which is he's a reporter, but he's chasing down vampires in '70s Los Angeles. What? That stuff's great.
It's
It's
terrifically fun.
yeah, it lets you do things that neither one could do
Yeah,
separately.
yeah, and I'm thinking of some really major. I guess they might be considered genre novels. They break genre in a lot of ways. The Left Hand of Darkness, for example, it's kind of sci-fi,
Yeah,
but it still features a lot of folklore. There's a lot of mysticism. There's a scene where Genli Ai visits a soothsayer, and there's this like psychic group with a fortune teller who can give prophecies, and he just kind of hangs out with the fortune teller for a while. Blindsight, I mentioned, it's hard science fiction. It's very much a hard sci-fi story, but there's a fucking vampire in it.
well, as was I Am Legend was
Yeah,
basically science fiction, but hey, there's vampires, and oh by the way, they've won.
yeah. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the series is all over the place in terms of subject matter, also in terms of style.
Yeah,
Each installment is radically different from the one before it. It's like he just decided, I'm gonna just totally write like start over and write like a totally different book each time, and it's great. It's this classic beloved series. Star Wars, I mean, the big franchise. It
yep,
is a space opera, but it's full of wizards.
right.
It's full of damn wizards. Moving to video games, the Final Fantasy series has you blowing up nuclear reactors and flying zeppelins around with like a fire witch
This
and a
sounds
demigod.
way more interesting than the movie that came out in like 2000 or
Oh
2001.
god, I
So,
didn't see that.
it's I was in animation at the time, and everybody was talking about how amazing it was and how the
Right,
hair was
and
realistic. It's
it's
like I
it's
watched it. It's like this is
aged
crap.
badly. It's
This
so
is
dated.
bad. There's nothing. There was nothing to tie it to Final Fantasy, and it was just a bog standard kind of science fictiony
Yeah,
atmospheric piece.
too
It wasn't
bad.
very good.
Let's see. There's the Dune novels. The Dune, it's sort of
Yeah,
sci-fi, but like there's a ton of mysticism in there. There's
yeah.
magic. There's
Well, and and they're
yeah,
they're and the movies. Lynch's movie anyway is Goth Star Wars, so
right.
it's like, well, yeah, he becomes a Jedi. Only, well, he's not really. He's not a friendly Jedi,
It's not a
so
nice one?
not
Question
a
mark?
nice one. Nope.
Let's see, Cowboy Bebop. It's a space western, and it's
Yeah.
terrifically fun. They're like it might be harder to sell stuff that breaks genre barriers, but when it gets through, like all these things I mentioned, these are widely beloved stories. I mean, The Left Hand of Darkness is a classic.
No, it's a huge classic.
Everybody loves Blade Runner or Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. People love that there have been a zillion Final Fantasy games where you're like a magic space techno wizard and it's fucking great. People love that shit.
I think there's a difference though in, for instance, anime versus versus a novel versus the
Yeah.
novel delivery, because I mean anime's a mode
Mhm.
almost. I mean it's animation where yes there are specific differences between the Western style and what we call anime, but they're going to be, I think they're far more willing to, oh, you got your peanut butter and my chocolate, so to speak.
I feel like people were more willing to do that just 20, 30, 40 years ago too.
Yeah,
I feel
I
like there's
I
much
think you're
more
not
of a
wrong.
rigidity to it now. That might just be me with nostalgia goggles on. Or
Well, I'm
maybe it's like I'm just remembering the really cool, interesting genre bending things that got through and forgetting that, for every Left Hand of Darkness, there was 100
yeah,
completely generic.
schlocky, just out there, and that's even in the big outlets, much less the, excuse me, the not quite ready for prime time outlet.
Right,
So yeah,
right. But
looking back at things, it is always easier to pick out the good stuff that wasn't immediately apparent. I mean, you'll always find something back in the day that people will always have been evangelizing for it, but the institution just didn't get it.
one of my favorite, I don't know if you'd want to call it a genre, but sci-fi horror, it's so fucking good.
Oh yeah,
It's again another combination of genres. It's so good. Everybody loves it. Why would you not make more of it?
yeah. Well, I mean, even something as simple as Alien and Alien.
Yeah.
An Alien is, it conquered what it conquered, or not, it came from outer space. There, it conquered the stars times Planet of the Vampires, which if you haven't seen is a really wonderful. It's not the greatest movie, but visually it's amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. I
Mm.
think it's Mario Bava. I just saw it recently, but it's very much, it sets down the rules of what would happen in Alien. But yeah, it's science fiction and it's horror. It's this stuff
Mm.
that it's like, okay, yeah, we're driving around in rocket ships and going to alien planets and we're being possessed by ghosts, which are beings that explain that they exist on a different vibrational frequency, but if they act like ghosts.
Right. Oh, I love that when there's a bullshit techno reason for ghosts or
Yeah,
vampires or whatever. Oh, that's my favorite. I love it. I love it. It's like, look, there's vampires in space. Just sit down. I will give you a bullshit reason as to why there are vampires in space,
right.
but just roll with it. There are space vampires. We're putting in some space vampires, and you're gonna accept this. It's so good.
Yeah, it's, I mean, Event Horizon, which I was not as kind to when it came out,
Oh, I
and
loved
I'm
that
about to
movie.
go back and revisit
Yeah, where
it
they
because
open a gateway to hell with a
they open a gate.
spaceship.
I
It's
mean,
so good.
it's Star Trek with Pinhead. So
It's pure nonsense. I love it. I love that shit. It's the best.
yeah,
It's the best. And there's this very silly idea that like I feel like people sometimes think it's more rational to keep it separate, but I mean I would point out that we've all heard of Clark's law, which is how
yeah,
sufficiently advanced tech is indistinguishable from magic. Why not
right,
take advantage of that if you're writing science fiction? And I think
yeah,
it's worth noting that in addition to technological research, the US and the USSR during the Cold War funded a shitload of research into psychic phenomena to try to build psychic super soldiers.
yep.
The
Because you can't.
Nazis straight up believed in magic and hunted for holy artifacts. Belief in the supernatural is common even in STEM contexts.
Yeah, well, you don't want to have a psychic warrior gap. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
that's just asking for the other side to
Exactly.
win.
If the other guy you might not totally believe in it, but if the other guys are funding research in like psychic warriors, well you got to fucking
Well, then
fund
we
your own
better do it.
research in your psychic warriors. You got to do
Yeah,
that in the extremely unlikely instance that it might work.
Because when you have to explain why that B-52 disappeared because it was being zapped with bad thoughts and orgone waves, then yeah, you better have an explanation. You better be ready to counter that. Yeah,
Right.
the Cold War. Wow.
I know. I just love that. That's pretty wild to me.
I wanted to bring up one of my favorite kind of non-genre things. Well, there's a
Okay.
couple of them, but one of them, talking about science fiction horror. Have you seen a series called Sapphire and Steel?
No.
It's from the 70s. It's a BBC series, and it's about two characters who are effectively time cops, but we do not see the agency that they work for ever. They're just given instructions, go fix this. There is a wound in time here. We need to fix it. And they use terminology like that. And it's creepy and spooky, and it's definitely, it's low-key horror. It's not overt blood and
Mm.
guts in your face horror. There's a lot of psychic horror, and a lot of it's implied because there's no budget, so you have to kind of, you get to participate in it too, which is even better as
Right,
far
it's
as I'm concerned.
1970s BBC. Your
Yep.
your budget per episode is like, here's $20.
Make let's do
Make
it.
a TV show. Let's
You
make
can
it happen.
chroma key a couple shots, and you got some lights. There you go. Let's all make this happen. It's wonderful, and you can watch it on IMDb TV, I think, which via Amazon is. I need to score the DVDs at some point,
Mm.
but it's not specifically horror, but it's filled with dread and being unsettled, and there are some strange pseudo technical explanations for things, but it's they say, oh no, this is actually the ghost of all these animals that were vivisected in the future, and they came back and they're trying to mess around with things now. And it's just, what is
Nice.
going on here? And of course, my favorite example from recent TV is Twin Peaks.
Oh, hell
What
yeah.
is it? What is
Hell
it?
yeah.
Is it horror? Is it a weirdo
Is it
following these quirky
mystery?
characters in a soap opera? Is it a mystery? Is it character study? What is it?
Right.
And then the first and second series, those are really good. Then Fire Walk with Me comes out. It's like, I have no idea what to do with this. I'm completely unprepared for this because it was a complete rope a dope. It was like, well, you think it's this thing, but it's not. It's this thing, and then you get KO'd. And
Yeah.
then the third series rolls around, and they just turn everything up to 15. It's just like,
Oh, it's
yeah,
so
you
good.
don't know what's going on now, do you?
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it's
you want
very
your
demanding.
nostalgia? Fuck you.
Yeah. Oh, you wanted season 3, and everything was cute and happy, and no. Here's what you
Oh my
get.
god, I could go on and on about Twin Peaks season 3. It's brilliant.
Just strictly on the level of, what is it?
Yeah.
Is it an art film? How do you describe it? TV series mystery? Okay,
Yeah.
sure, I guess.
It's oh god, it's extraordinary that David Lynch got to make this. That
Hmm.
David Lynch got to make something as weird as Twin Peaks on a major TV network in the 90s.
I'm wondering if he and
When like
Frost sat down.
Full House was on.
Oh yeah, I'm wondering if he and Mark Frost sat down and said, "Okay, we're gonna wait it out, and we'll find a way to make it happen 25 years later."
I know.
Maybe.
Well, isn't that what I think in the last episode in the red room, in the waiting room,
Yep.
Laura whispers into Dale Cooper's ear, I
Yep.
will see you again in 25 years.
Yep.
And she fucking did. That's wild.
Yeah. It's absolutely, it is an astonishing achievement that they pulled this off. So, but again, going back to the subject at hand, it defies all of that description. But Lynch usually does too.
Of
I
course,
mean,
he's David Lynch.
he's David Lynch. He works in his own form. So, again, some people are lucky enough that they can pull enough of an audience together and say, "Hey, look, just come on ride with me, okay? Just trust me.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you exactly what you're going to get,
And that
because
the
even if I
network
did,
gave
it
him
would
that
be,
level of creative freedom too.
yeah,
That's extraordinary. I don't think you're not going to see too much of that.
no,
Especially not now. I mean, did you see that list? Jeff Bezos had a
I did,
list
I
of
did
here are the 13 things that a good
that
show
make a.
needs.
It's like, yeah, I passed the Drano.
And I'm thinking my favorite shows don't have most of these. Mad Men didn't have all of them. Twin Peaks didn't
Yeah,
have all of them.
Sometimes not even any,
Breaking
not
Bad
even any
didn't
of them.
certainly didn't match all of them. And it's just heartbreaking thinking, okay, under this guy's rules, the best stuff wouldn't happen.
And again, what kind of gravitational force is he exerting on what's being put out?
Of course, because he's just the
Even him
zillionaire.
directly, and that's spooky.
Yeah. Yeah. Ugh, God. But fortunately, that doesn't apply quite as much when it comes to writing. I mean, it's harder to find a publisher for a book if your book is weird, but it's not like you don't need somebody else to give you millions of dollars to write the book. You just
Right.
you just go and you write the book, and then you beg somebody to publish it.
Yeah.
And then maybe you self-publish it if you can't find someone. So what? Oh well.
That's fun too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
That's
I
its
will
own
say,
adventure.
in the case of my first book for Broken Eye Books, I knew that I was going to have to do something weird adjacent or weird like. It's not that I was writing specifically to a genre, because honestly, you can go a lot of different places with weird. Weird is more a mood and a feeling
Mhm.
than, I mean, yeah, you have the skittering things on the edge of oblivion peeking in. Okay, well, I mean, yeah, we deal with that every day, but
Yeah.
there was that level of expectation, but a lot of it was like, yeah, but I don't want to go into the creepy abandoned house and find the creepy abandoned book that tells us the story of these, the creepy things from beyond infinity. I mean, although there is a book in there, but it's a book the character writes. So
Mm.
yeah, I use that trope. Sorry, I went there. It's like, okay, well, so there's the parameters of it. There's kind of the field I can play in. What parts of the field can I dig up? How far out on the edge can I get without falling off? That's way more interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't ever approach my stories in terms of I'm going to write a horror story. It's I'm going to write a story and I guess it'll be horror then. I guess it'll
Yeah,
just because that's the subject matter and the tone that's coming out. Um but I would worry a lot about how the ubiquity of fandom and how fandom is like becoming this more and more all-consuming force kind of saps people away from that. Because,
yeah,
like, if you're a fan of such and such thing, then you want to make that thing,
yeah.
and you end up doing the fanboy art, fangirl art, and not kind of forging your own path. But oh, these are the parameters. All right, I'll make something within these parameters, and not expanding that. So if any of our listeners have that problem, have that habit, I'd really encourage you. If you want to be a fantasy novelist or something, I encourage you to like not try to write fantasy so
Yeah.
much as to just try to write. And if it comes out fantasy, then that's awesome. And maybe it won't. Maybe it'll come out as something a lot more like strange and wonderful and different. And that's good. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of that. Go off the beaten path a little bit.
A quick thing is also, I think there's an expectation of, if I write this as fantasy that everybody recognizes as fantasy, I'll have a better chance of succeeding and connecting with an audience.
Mm.
And I mean, that's hard to argue with.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's actually true is, another issue entirely.
It's hard to argue with, but I guess I could say that if you're that obsessed with writing something within that genre, is it is it even going to be interesting enough to get published? Because
Well,
yeah, standing
that's
out can hurt you, but not standing out enough, that sure hurts you too. Because
oh yeah,
there are a million people with manuscripts of generic fantasy novels trying to get published, and you got to have something special about you,
yeah,
even if it's not a huge thing. But you've got to be different from the million other manuscripts the publisher gets that year.
yeah. No, it's a frightening amount of manuscripts that are being lobbed at publishers, much
Right.
less even looking at the self-publishing wing of things. And at that point, it's almost a matter of voice, and can you make the telephone book interesting with your voice? That's kind of one way I put it. Just if your writing voice is compelling enough, you can make average material sing. And hopefully your editor will say, okay, this is kind of average material, but let's see if we can punch these things up.
I'm not sure if that I don't know if that's the approach to take though. Like if you're treating your own work as here's a boring thing, let me punch it up with my voice. Like that almost feels backwards to like treat
No,
your own
I'm
work
not
like
saying
that.
that's not something to aspire to, but that's something that somebody with a voice may wander in with, if you see what I'm saying.
Uh,
Somebody may have. I imagine that there's probably a generic fantasy that can be written well enough that I would pay attention. I don't know that I'm ever going to find it though, because it's not what I'm going after, and I don't have the time to read. I read nonfiction now.
well, I
I
can't
read
see
some fiction,
somebody
but
with
not
a
a lot.
voice like that writing generic fantasy, you know?
Well, you never
I have
know.
trouble with that. Just how would that happen if you have the amount of talent to make such an extraordinary voice? I don't know.
Who knows?
All right. Well, why don't we wrap it up because we've been talking for a little over an hour. Where can our listeners find your work?
My work right now is being published by Broken Eye Books. So if you go to www.brokeneyebooks.com, I also maintain my own site at Highway 62 Press, all one word.com. I blog semi-regularly. It's just that /blog. But if you go to the website, you'll see a button that you can click on, and there we go. And I yak too much on Twitter, where I am at highway_62. But I won't explain any of my books to you, so don't ask.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And thank you, audience, for listening. That's all for this week's episode. If you like what you heard, please support us at patreon.com/Rite Gud. And be sure to join us next time when we talk about negative space. Until then, keep writing good.
This has been Rite Gud with Raquel S. Benedict. Hosted by Raquel S. Benedict and produced by Matt Keeley for KS Media LLC. Edited by Sid Oosley. Theme song by Surgeryhead. This has been a Kitty Sneezes production. For comments and concerns, please write to us at writegud@kittysneezes.com. That is RITEGUD at kittysneezes.com. If you'd like to support us, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/writegud.
kittysneezes.com in color.